John Cena sat quietly inside a McDonald's in Los Angeles, savoring a rare moment of peace. He was halfway through his burger when a small boy, no older than 5, clutching a broken toy car, walked up to him. The child leaned in and whispered something into his ear. In an instant, John's expression shifted, his face paling. Without hesitation, he reached for his phone and dialed 911. What unfolded next would move everyone who heard the story. But before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow we'll share another heartwarming tale you won't want to miss. The afternoon sun spread golden light across Los Angeles, stretching long shadows over the city. John Cena, known for his humility despite his fame, had spent the day at a charity event for children in need. He had laughed, played games, and devoted his time to giving them moments of joy. But hours of interaction had left him drained. Instead of going to a high-end restaurant or retreating to his private home, he pulled into a McDonald's parking lot. It wasn't something he often did, but today he longed for something simple. Just a touch of normalcy. Inside, the fast food restaurant buzzed with life. Families crowded around tables, voices mingling with the sound of fryers and order numbers being called out. Children giggled as they ran around the small indoor play area. The air smelled of fries and grilled burgers, scents that brought a sense of nostalgia. Wearing a plain black t-shirt and sunglasses, John blended in. He ordered a burger and fries, picked up his tray, and settled into a corner seat by the window. Turning off his phone, he gave himself a rare break from the outside world. As he unwrapped his burger, his gaze caught a boy at a nearby table. The child, with messy blonde hair and a faded blue t-shirt, looked as though life hadn't given him much comfort. In his small hands, he gripped a broken toy car, his fingers tracing its jagged edges as if wishing it back to life. John offered a small smile and returned to his meal. But the boy didn't look away. His wide eyes remained fixed on John, not with excitement, not even recognition, but something else. A quiet hesitation, a mix of fear and curiosity. At the same table sat a sharply dressed man in a fitted suit. His face was stern, his demeanor cold, his attention buried in his phone. Every so often, he would glance at the boy with irritation, as though the child's presence was bothersome. John noticed the stark contrast, the man's rigid distance against the boy's vulnerability. It stirred something inside him. Minutes passed. The boy continued sneaking glances at John, fidgeting nervously with his toy. Finally, summoning courage, he slid off his chair and walked over, clutching the car tightly. Standing beside John, he leaned in and whispered softly. John bent closer to hear. The words made his breath catch. His eyes searched the child's trembling face, his grip on the toy car tightening like it was his only comfort. Ethan. That was the boy's name. John could feel the urgency in his voice, a quiet desperation. This wasn't the nervous awe of a child meeting a celebrity. It was a plea. Before John could respond, movement from across the room drew his attention. The man in the suit had noticed. John felt the weight of his sharp, calculating stare even before their eyes met. Later, he would come to know him as Mr. Harris. Harris placed his phone down slowly. his mouth curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. Ethan flinched. The man rose deliberately, smoothing the front of his suit with steady hands. Every movement radiated authority and control. John stayed seated, subtly shifting to shield the boy. Harris walked toward them, his polished shoes clicking softly against the floor. Stopping just a few feet away, he glanced at Ethan before fixing his gaze on John. When he spoke, his tone was smooth, practiced. "Sorry about this," Harris said with a chuckle that lacked warmth. "Ethan can be a little too curious sometimes. I hope he hasn't bothered you." John studied him carefully. His instincts told him this was no ordinary interaction. Danger was hiding beneath the surface. "No bother at all," John replied evenly. "He was just showing me his toy car." He glanced down at the chipped blue vehicle still clutched tightly in Ethan's hands. "Looks like it's been through a lot." For a brief moment, something flashed across Harris's face, annoyance. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Yes, well," he said, his voice tighter now, "he's quite attached to it. But we really should be going." He extended a hand toward the boy. "Come on, Ethan." Ethan hesitated, taking a small step back. The gesture was subtle, but John caught it, and so did Harris. The atmosphere between them thickened. Around them, the restaurant buzzed on as usual, but inside their corner of space, everything felt still. Though Harris's lips held a smile, his patience was thinning. John leaned back slightly in his chair, his tone casual. "Maybe he just needs a minute. Kids don't always want to leave right away." Ethan clutched the toy car tighter. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I don't want to go." Harris's jaw twitched as he slowly adjusted his suit. "I appreciate your concern," he said, still polite on the surface but clipped at the edges. "But this is a family matter." John didn't move. Behind him, a waitress carrying a tray had stopped mid-step, sensing the tension. She lingered, unsure if she should step in. John gave her a small, almost invisible nod before focusing back on Harris. His instincts told him this was no simple case of a stubborn child. Harris's hand hung in the air, waiting for Ethan to obey. But the boy remained frozen, shifting closer to John, his small frame pressed against him. The way Ethan clutched both his toy car and John's shirt told him everything. This wasn't about reluctance, it was about fear. John kept his posture relaxed, though his mind was racing. Years in film and in life had taught him to read people. And Harris, this wasn't just a strict guardian. There was something darker beneath his polished act. Harris forced a smile, withdrawing his hand. His voice came low, carefully controlled. "Ethan, let's go." John studied his face. Too smooth, too practiced. But his jaw was tight, a crack in the mask. Ethan's reply was almost a whisper. "I don't want to go." That was enough for John. He shifted, subtly positioning himself between Harris and the child. His tone was calm but firm. Maybe he just needs a little more time. Kids don't like being rushed. Harris exhaled sharply through his nose. His patience was slipping. He glanced around and noticed people watching now. The waitress near the counter, another employee behind the register slowing his work, observing. John noticed too. And he wasn't going to let Ethan leave with this man until he understood why. He was just telling me about his toy, John continued lightly, but his eyes stayed locked on Harris. Looks like it's been through a lot. Ethan's voice cracked as he finally whispered, "It was my mom's." John felt his chest tighten. Harris jumped in quickly, waving a dismissive hand. "Yes, he's sentimental about it," he said smoothly. "But we should really be leaving." John let the words hang, then looked at Ethan again. The boy wasn't only scared, he was terrified of leaving with this man. That alone told John everything he needed to know. Sliding a hand casually under the table, John pulled out his phone. With years of practice, he typed a quick message to a trusted contact. "Something's wrong. Need help. McDonald's on Sunset." He hit send just as Harris stepped forward, his voice low. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this has gone far enough." John smiled, but this time there was steel beneath it. "I'm just listening." Harris's eyes darkened. "I suggest you stop." But John didn't budge. The waitress, who had been watching, approached slowly with a tray. She set a glass of water on John's table and discreetly slipped a folded napkin beneath it. John thanked her with a nod and unfolded it just enough to read the hurried scrawl. "The police are on their way." Relief flickered, but he knew danger wasn't past yet. He had to hold Harris here, keep him talking until help arrived. Leaning back in his chair, John kept his tone steady. "Ethan seems a little shaken. Maybe we should slow things down and let him finish telling me about his car." Harris's jaw clenched. His voice was sharper now. "With all due respect, Mr. Cena, this isn't your concern." John met his gaze without blinking. "That's where you're wrong. When a child comes up to a stranger asking for help, that makes it everyone's concern." Ethan clutched his toy car like it was a lifeline, his small hands trembling. Fear shook him, yet John sensed he was gathering the courage to speak. The boy drew in a shaky breath and whispered, "I don't want to go with him." Harris stiffened. The polished mask he wore was slipping fast. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only John and Ethan could hear. "You have no idea what you're getting into," he murmured, menace hidden beneath the calm tone. "Walk away now and you'll save yourself a world of trouble." John didn't flinch. Instead, he crouched to Ethan's level, meeting his eyes gently. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "Do you want to tell me why you don't want to go with him?" Ethan's lip quivered. After a pause, his voice cracked. He did something bad to my mom." John's stomach dropped. That was all the confirmation he needed. Before he could say more, Harris lunged forward, reaching for Ethan's arm. But John moved faster, stepping in front and blocking him with his body. His voice was calm but firm. "Commitments can wait. Ethan needs a moment." Harris's frustration showed, his breath sharp. He was about to argue when the front doors of the McDonald's swung open. Two uniformed officers strode inside, scanning the room with purpose. Their eyes quickly landed on John, Ethan, and Harris. John felt Ethan's hand tighten around his, trembling, but with a spark of hope now. One officer, tall with Ramirez on his badge, stepped forward. His partner, Officer Vega, crouched slightly to make eye contact with the boy. "We received a call about a possible situation," Ramirez said evenly. "Is everything all right here?" Harris adjusted instantly, smoothing his suit and forcing a polite smile. "Officers, I'm afraid this is a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "Ethan is my son. He's just being dramatic. Everything's fine." Vega's sharp gaze flicked between Harris and the boy. Ethan shrank back, gripping his car tighter. John knew hesitation would cost them. "I think you should hear what Ethan has to say," John interjected firmly, though his tone stayed measured. Ramirez crouched to Ethan's eye level. "Hey, buddy, can you tell us what's going on?" The boy looked at John, who gave him a small reassuring nod. Ethan swallowed hard, then whispered, his voice shaking. "He hurt my mom, and he said no one would believe me." A heavy silence fell. Vega's eyes hardened. She looked at Ramirez, and without hesitation, he turned back to Harris. "Sir, we'll need you to stay right where you are while we look into this." Harris's smile faltered. He let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "This is ridiculous. You're really going to take the word of a child over an adult?" "We take every claim seriously," Vega replied, her tone like steel. Harris's patience snapped. His polite mask dropped. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he hissed, eyes darting toward the exit. John saw it in his posture, the twitch, the glance. He was about to bolt. Before Harris could move, Ramirez lunged forward, seizing his arm and twisting it behind his back with trained precision. Harris grunted, struggling only for a moment before Vega snapped handcuffs around his wrists. "You're making a mistake." Harris barked. "You have no proof." "We'll see about that," Ramirez replied coldly. John exhaled, finally allowing tension to ease from his body. He looked at Ethan, who watched with wide, tear-filled eyes. John knelt and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's okay now," he murmured. "You're safe." Ethan's voice cracked as he whispered, "What about my mom?" John's expression hardened with resolve. "Then let's go find her." The officers guided Harris out of the McDonald's, his protests echoing through the restaurant. Customers whispered, some pulling out phones to record, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Harris's once polished image had shattered in front of everyone. Ethan clung tightly to John's side, his small frame trembling. John bent down, his voice steady. "You did the right thing, Ethan. You were brave." The boy nodded, though his wide eyes still carried fear. Officer Vega crouched beside them. "Ethan, do you know where your mom is?" The child hesitated, then whispered, "He said she was at home, but I don't know if she's okay." John felt the urgency press against his chest. He looked at Ramirez. "Let's go. Now." Within minutes, John was riding in the back seat of the squad car with Ethan, while Ramirez drove and Vega radioed in for backup. The city lights blurred past the window as the car sped through Los Angeles traffic. Ethan clutched his toy car tightly, whispering as though speaking to himself. She always said if I was scared, to hold on to this. She said it would remind me she's with me. John placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. She sounds like a strong woman, and we're going to get her back. When they arrived at the address Ethan gave, the street was unusually quiet. A small, dimly lit house stood at the end of the block. The squad car rolled to a stop, headlights cutting across the driveway. John's instincts screamed something was wrong. Ramirez and Vega stepped out first, their hands hovering near their holsters. John held Ethan close, scanning the shadows. The boy's hand trembled in his. "Stay behind me," John whispered. They approached the front door. It was ajar, the faint creak carrying into the night. Vega's hand went up, signaling caution. Ramirez pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with silence. The living room was in disarray. Chairs overturned, a lamp shattered. John's pulse quickened. "Ethan, stay close," he murmured. The boy's eyes darted around the room, fear etched on his face. "Mom," he called softly. From down the hall came a muffled sound, a weak groan. Ramirez moved swiftly, weapon drawn, while Vega covered him. John kept Ethan behind him as they followed. At the end of the hallway, they found her. A woman, bound to a chair, bruised and barely conscious. Ethan gasped. "Mom!" John rushed forward, helping Ramirez untie her while Vega checked the rest of the house. The woman's eyes fluttered open, focusing on her son. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Ethan." The boy threw his arms around her, sobbing into her shoulder. John's jaw tightened as he glanced around the room. Harris's cruelty was written in every overturned object, every bruise on her skin. "You're safe now," John said firmly. "He won't hurt you again." Officer Vega reappeared, shaking her head. "House is clear. Backup's on the way." Relief washed over the room, but John knew this was only the beginning. Healing would take time, but tonight, Ethan and his mother had been given a second chance. The flashing lights of police cars painted the street red and blue as paramedics rushed into the house. Ethan's mother, weak but conscious, was carefully lifted onto a stretcher. Ethan never let go of her hand, his small fingers clutching tightly as though afraid she might disappear again. John stood nearby, watching with steady eyes. Relief coursed through him, but the sight of the bruises on her arms and the fear etched into her face fueled his resolve. Harris had caused more damage than anyone had realized. Officer Ramirez stepped over. "She'll be taken to the hospital. We'll have a unit guard her room until she's stable." John nodded, then looked down at Ethan. "She's safe now. And you did this, you protected her." The boy blinked up at him, confusion flickering across his face. "But I was so scared." John placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you stand up anyway. And you did." Ethan's grip on his toy car tightened. His eyes softened, a small glimmer of pride shining through the fear. As paramedics guided his mother out, neighbors began to gather, murmuring about the commotion. Some recognized John Cena and whispered in surprise, but he ignored the attention. His focus stayed on Ethan. Officer Vega approached, carrying a small bag of evidence collected from the house. Her expression was grim. This wasn't the first time Harris hurt them. We found signs of long-term abuse. John's jaw clenched. Then he'll never get near them again. Vega nodded firmly. With Ethan's statement and his mother's testimony once she recovers, Harris doesn't stand a chance. Ethan's mother reached out from the stretcher, her voice hoarse. Thank you for believing us." John shook his head softly. "No thanks needed. You're the strong ones. I just happened to be there." As the ambulance doors closed, Ethan looked at John anxiously. "Will you come with us?" John crouched to his level, smiling gently. "I'll be right behind you. I promise." The ambulance pulled away, sirens fading into the distance. John stood, exhaling a long breath. He had come to McDonald's for a quiet meal, but fate had put him in the right place at the right time. Looking toward the night sky, he murmured quietly to himself, "Sometimes being in the wrong place at the right moment changes everything." The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Ethan sat on a chair beside his mother's bed, his small hand resting in hers. She looked pale but stronger now, her eyes filled with gratitude each time they met his. John stood at the doorway, watching the tender scene unfold. It reminded him of why he had stayed, not for recognition, but because something about Ethan's courage had struck him deeply. When Ethan noticed him, his face lit up. "John," he called, waving eagerly. John walked in with a gentle smile. "Hey, champ. How's your mom doing?" "She's better," Ethan said proudly. "The doctors said she'll be okay." His mother's voice was hoarse but warm. "And that's because of you. You saved me, Ethan." The boy shook his head. "No, Mom." John did. John crouched beside the bed, his eyes kind. "Actually, your bravery is what saved her. You spoke up when it mattered most. That took real courage." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. "For so long I thought no one would believe us. Harris made sure of that. But you did. Both of you." John squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to live in fear anymore. The law will take care of Harris now. And you'll have a fresh start." Officer Vega entered the room just then, holding a folder. Her tone was firm. "The evidence is strong. With your testimony and Ethan's, Harris will face the full weight of the law. He's already been denied bail." Relief washed over the woman's face. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering, "Thank God." John glanced at Ethan, who sat straighter now, a little more confident than before. "You hear that? You made sure justice was done." Ethan smiled shyly, fiddling with his toy car. "Mom says this car keeps us safe. She says it's like hope you can hold." John looked at the chipped toy in his hand, then back at Ethan. "Then hold onto it, because hope is what brought you both through this." For a while, the room was filled with silence. Peaceful, healing silence. the kind that felt like a new beginning. As John prepared to leave, Ethan's mother whispered, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," John replied softly. "Just live free. That's thanks enough." Weeks passed, and life began to shift for Ethan and his mother. The hospital stay ended, and with support from local organizations, they were moved into a safe apartment far from Harris's reach. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, a place where fear no longer lingered in every corner. John visited often, checking in quietly, never overstaying. Each time, he brought something thoughtful, a bag of groceries, a book for Ethan, or simply his company. One afternoon, Ethan rushed to the door as John knocked. "You came back," he shouted with pure joy, his toy car still clutched tightly in one hand. John smiled as he stepped inside. "Of course I did. Can't let my little buddy think I forgot about him." Inside, the apartment was modest but filled with warmth. Drawings lined the fridge, many of them of John, Ethan, and his mom. One sketch showed a smiling family around a dinner table. Ethan's mother offered John a cup of coffee. "You've done more for us than anyone ever has. I don't even know how to repay you." John shook his head. "You don't owe me a thing. You're rebuilding your lives. That's all the repayment I need." Ethan climbed onto John's lap, proudly showing him his newest drawing. "This is us at the park. And that's Mom smiling." John studied the picture, his heart warming. "You're quite the artist, Ethan. You don't just draw what you see, you draw what you feel. That's a gift." The boy beamed, cheeks flushed with pride. Later that evening, as John prepared to leave, Ethan clung to his arm. "Will you always be around?" he asked softly. John crouched down, meeting his eyes. "I might not always be here in person, but I'll always be in your corner. Whenever you feel scared, remember how brave you were. That bravery, that's yours forever." Ethan hugged him tightly, whispering, "Thank you for everything." John hugged him back, whispering just as gently, "You're welcome, buddy. Never forget, you saved your mom." As John left the apartment, the glow of a street lamp spilled across the sidewalk. He looked back once, seeing Ethan at the window, waving with his toy car in hand. It was a reminder, sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes, they're just people who choose to stand up when it matters most. Months later, Ethan's life looked completely different. His laughter echoed in places where silence once lived. His drawings brighter than ever before. The once faded toy car still never left his hand. It had become more than a toy. It was his symbol of survival, of hope, of love. His mother had started working again, slowly piecing her life back together. Those scars remained, both visible and hidden. She carried herself with new strength. The fear that once shadowed her every step had given way to determination. John remained a quiet presence, never in the spotlight, never seeking recognition. He simply checked in now and then, making sure they were safe, reminding them they weren't alone. One warm afternoon, Ethan ran to meet John at the park. The boy's smile was wider than John had ever seen. "Look," Ethan shouted, holding up a fresh sketch. The drawing showed a happy family, himself, his mom, and John. all standing together, smiling beneath a bright sun. Above them, he had written in large, uneven letters, "Family." John knelt, studying the picture. His throat tightened. "You're a remarkable kid, Ethan," he said softly. "You remind everyone that no matter what happens, love always finds a way." Ethan hugged him fiercely. "You're part of our family, too." John returned the embrace, his eyes glistening. He didn't correct the boy. In truth, he felt the same. Later, as John walked home under the fading sunset, he thought about everything that had happened. He had gone into a McDonald's that day simply to eat in peace. Instead, he had walked out with a mission, one that had changed not only Ethan's life but his own. He knew the world was filled with pain, with cruelty, with men like Harris. But it was also filled with children like Ethan, brave, unbroken, carrying hope in the palm of their hands. And that was enough reason to keep going. This story isn't just about Ethan, his mother, or John Cena. It's about the power of kindness, the strength to stand up when it matters, and the belief that even the smallest act can spark a chain of hope. Ethan's toy car may have been chipped and worn, but in his hands, it became a reminder that light can always break through darkness. And as long as people choose to care, to act, and to protect, there will always be heroes among us.